Hey everybody, I should probably make sure I'm actually visible here, right? Anyway, welcome to another episode of, I don't even know what this is, PC hardware news. And we've got a whole bunch of different things to talk about today, not even 100% sure which one we should start with, so let's just do this one. Well, this is more on the leaks and rumors side of things. The basic thing is I've got a lot of people wondering, okay, is it too late in the product cycle to buy a 4000 series GPU? How close are we to the 50 series? Some people had, we had seen some info that maybe it would be 2025 before we got the 50 series. It's looking like the latest info points to a Q4 2024 release, which would be sticking to the 2-year release cadence that we've seen recently. But keep in mind though that they usually lead with the highest end products. So that would be like the 5080 and the 5090, which if that's what you're looking for, then yeah, maybe hold off. However, keep in mind that then it's generally months before you start to kind of trickle down to the lower end products. So we could still be, pretty far away from something like a 5060. So if that's what you're waiting for, just realize you would be probably waiting a very long time. Now, all my sources will be in the video description. This is a video, this is a WCCF Tech article. They're quoting, basically machine translating a quote saying, as NVIDIA storms into the AI business, graphic cards related products also continue to introduce new products. Board card manufacturers expect that NVIDIA's latest RTX 50 series graphics cards will be unveiled in the fourth quarter. So again, board card manufacturers are expecting the 50 series in Q4. Initially, they will focus on top-end and high-end 5090 and 5080 product lines, which again sounds like it lines up with what they've done like with the 40 series, where we got the 4080 and the 4090 in Q4 2022, but then it took a lot longer to get the rest of the stack out there. Anyway, that's basically what we're getting at here. It all sounds pretty reasonable, but again, this is not some kind of official release date announcement from NVIDIA or anything like that. And we've had some previous leaks and rumors showing that it's possible that the top-end chip, the GB202 that you would expect on something like a 5090, looks massively more powerful than the next step down, like GB203. So if it's still the case that the 80 class card is on the next step down chip from the 90 class card, I'm a little bit worried that the gap between the 80 and 90 class could actually even grow compared to what we saw in the 40 series, which was already a much larger gap than we saw in the 30 series. In the 30 series, the 80 and 90 class cards both shared the top-end chip. But again, this is still more in the leaks and rumors side of things. In more concrete news, we are taking a look at where which cards are actually selling, what are the most popular, and the Steam hardware survey is a useful but not perfect tool for monitoring that. I've discussed some issues with why, it's not actually a perfect representation of the entire graphics card market, but it's still interesting to look at trends. The RTX 3060 is taking the top spot now, with the 2060 following up behind that, and then the 1650 behind there, followed by the 3060 Ti, the 3070, the 1060, the 3060, then finally the 4060 entering as the most popular of the 40 series, and then followed by the 4070. Again, you can keep on going before you see a whole lot of the 40 series. So again, it's still dominated by 30 series, a little bit of 20 series, and again, a while down there before you see the AMD GPUs and all of that. So interesting to take a quick look at that. But I want to talk about this story, which here we're gonna translate to English using the powers of Google. So I've seen a lot of places running with this. However, I'm not sure this is as something to worry about as I've seen places quoting this seeming to run with. So I was seeing reports that a bunch of 13th and 14th gen Intel CPUs were having problems. I was seeing commenters saying that they were basically running at such high power, they're just breaking down after a few months. So I was trying to source the source for those claims, and it seems to be a bunch of articles pointing back to this Korean outlet, ZDNet, saying that, quoting certain, I think, businesses selling these CPUs, saying that they're having more than 10 people a day come to the center and ask for an exchange, even if there's no problem. please exchange it. So this looked interesting, but again, I'm not quite sure it is the big issue that it claims to be. I'm also not saying it isn't, but I just don't think there's enough evidence to run with this as some kind of big disaster story. So apparently there's been a bunch of people seeing similar issues when they're trying to run games. Apparently a bunch of people running Tekken 8 were having a problem running the Tekken 8 demo, saying that there's no problem when the game's installed or executed, but while the game is running, a message saying not enough video memory suddenly appears and the game is forced to quit. Now that's interesting because to me that doesn't, at least to me, sound like a CPU issue, but it sounds like people are blaming their CPUs for this problem. And then so then it's saying that they're going to return the CPUs. Again, I'm trying to figure out how they're blaming the CPU for this issue. And the article itself is even saying that so far the exact cause of the problem has not been revealed. However, the Intel processor defect theory is gaining momentum in the domestic Korean market. Domestic companies that distribute processors for Intel desktop PCs are also embarrassed by the sudden increase in processor replacement demand, so returns. So, I don't know, this sounds interesting. That does certainly seem like there are a bunch of Korean customers going to return their 13th and 14th gen Intel CPUs. But again, it sounds to me unproven that it's specifically actually the Intel CPUs causing the issue, but I'm seeing it reported as that when other places are taking this news source as their source. So I would just say this is certainly warrants some looking into, but I didn't think it was necessarily the big disaster that it was being reported as. Now, in other Intel news, I think this is pretty interesting. Take a look at the before and after on the newest version of XeSS upscaling. That seems like a massive improvement to the temporal stability. Now, it's not completely perfect in motion, but it is certainly much improved. Now, this is Intel's new XeSS 1.3. Now, along with these changes is kind of something that I like and I don't like at the same time, which is they're changing the meaning of their names. So like, for example, normally if you would choose quality level upscaling from FSR, DLSS, and XeSS, they all meant the same thing in terms of the internal rendering resolution. So for example, if you're playing at 4K, quality level upscaling would have rendered at 1440p. It's a 1.5 times resolution scale per axis. Now, that's what XeSS has been doing, but with their move to 1.3, they're changing that to a 1.7. 1.7 used to be what was called balanced. And they're changing their balanced to be a 2x upscale per axis. That's a 4x area upscale. But that's what used to be called the performance mode. Now they're making performance mode be a 2.3x upscale, which I think is more like what was an ultra performance upscale, but I'm not sure on the exact thing, the exact ratio for ultra performance. And now they are introducing an ultra performance, which is a 3x. So actually, but anyway, the point is that now in games that feature the 1.3 version of XeSS, this is going to be complicated, especially when people are trying to compare the effectiveness of FSR, DLSS, and XeSS. It used to be that if you selected the same name, you got the same internal rendering resolution. Now that's not going to be the case with the 1.3 version. So that's just something to be aware of, especially for reviewers, because that does definitely complicate things. So I like that it's, in the end, it's introducing more options. I like that it is introducing more total options now, including a native AA, so kind of the equivalent of something like DLAA, where you're not using it to upscale, but you are using it for a high-quality anti-aliasing. So we're getting more options, cool. But I don't like the names being renamed, rebadged for what they are. I guess for the end user, that's probably not that big of a deal, but at least for reviewers, I think that's going to be confusing. And it's also, again, for people directly comparing, DLSS quality to XeSS quality. Well, those are no longer doing the same thing exactly. So just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And but I do think it's good. What I really wish they would all give is just a percentage slider. So just give me a percentage slider for the rendering resolution. Maybe for the casual user, I guess maybe that would be more intimidating or more confusing or something like that. But for me personally, that's how I wish they would all operate. But anyway, it is what it is. Now, some people have already started testing it out, it looks like. I'm seeing articles reporting that it is showing improvements, but now notice that they are having to make sure they're pairing up like ultra quality XeSS versus the XeSS 1.3 versus quality 1.2, because those are the same internal rendering resolution. Which again, and then you can look at the quality version of XeSS 1.3, but that's now giving more FPS than the quality version of 1.2 did, but that's not because it's a faster algorithm, that's because it's lowering the internal rendering resolution. But if it gives a better output, I mean, okay, but I'm just saying, as I'm saying, it's getting confusing. From the tests that people have run, it does certainly look promising. And backing up some of Intel's claims of the improved motion clarity and less ghosting and artifacting and things like that. Now, DLSS is not sitting on the side just watching everybody else improve. They are also continuing to improve as well, moving to DLSS 3.7.0. And with DLSS, you can drop in the DLL files and try them out in games that didn't even have them implemented natively by the game devs. And it's looking like we are also seeing some testing occurring on that, again pointing to some image quality improvements, which again is very nice to see. Now, speaking of upscaler improvements, we are looking at Horizon Forbidden West developers saying that they are working on getting AMD's FSR 3 into the game. Although, I think it'd be cool to see 3.1. We've seen AMD talking about 3.1, so they're finally moving on some improvements to their underlying upscaler technology now that they've got their frame generator out there. So it is good to see all of these technologies moving forward. And we're actually seeing news about FSR 3 coming soon to consoles. I was curious when we would see this, and it's looking like Immortals of Avium, which was one of the two first games to get FSR 3 on PC, will be working to be one of the first or possibly the first FSR 3 implementation on console. Including some frame pacing improvements coming and HDR coming to the PC version as well. So it looks like their work on updating this for console will also help the PC version. Because the PC version of FSR 3 was, again, that initial implementation that was also in Forspoken, which was less good on frame pacing, especially for variable refresh rate situations, than the FSR 3 implementations we saw later on in other games. Now, I have mixed feelings about it coming to consoles because my understanding of Immortals of Avium is it has trouble hitting 60 FPS, and when it does, it's at an extremely low internal resolution. So what is their frame rate target for FSR 3? Because if it's just trying to get them to 60 frames per second, even AMD doesn't recommend using FSR 3 frame generation to achieve a 60 FPS output. They recommend using it on a 60 FPS base to then achieve higher refresh rates. So if you read AMD's documentation, that's their recommended use case. That's also similar to how I feel about using it. Now with consoles, when you're using a controller, I certainly feel less of an issue with latency. I guess because it's just less of a one-to-one interaction than a mouse cursor is. I guess somehow the latency just feels kind of less of an issue, less noticeable to me than when my mouse movements feel floaty. But, there's still image quality issues to to take into account and things like that with the lower base frame rate when you do the interpolation. So anyway, I'm curious how this plays out and what it ends up looking like in the console market. My fear that I hope doesn't come to pass is that this is even more of an excuse to just not optimize console games and just be like, well, we got to 60 FPS by kicking on frame generation, so we're good to go. We'll see what happens. Now, Intel is releasing an update to PresentMon to version 2.0. Now, for a lot of people, this might not be of huge interest. If you watch Gamers Nexus, they've talked a bit about this before it was released to the public. It has some interesting additions to the kinds of stats it can display, including trying to show issues with when you see games just looking like they're stuttery, but the frame time counter still looks good. They're looking for some improvements to that. Also with some software measurements for latency, which is extremely interesting because getting latency calculations in there is very important, especially if you're talking about things like frame generation. So I think this will be very useful for hardware reviews, but actually maybe even more so for game reviews, talking about game performance and trying to identify issues with them, and for you trying to understand why the games are performing like they are and how to get your hardware running as best as possible. So anyway, Intel's PresentMon 2.0 does look very promising for all of that. Now, in not great news, it's looking like we're seeing SSD price hikes have already hit buyers hard. They've already been going up, but it's looking like expecting double-digit price increases still to come. So while the GPU market on building a PC has not been exciting price-wise, we had a while there where SSDs were great prices. So maybe if you lose a bit of money on the GPU deal you got for building your PC, you could still get some great deals on other parts. It wasn't a terrible time to build a PC if you looked at it from the big picture perspective. But the SSD price hikes seem to be going up and could continue to go up from there. This always seems to be kind of cyclical with the DRAM pricing. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about a few things that I didn't report on the channel, but I've seen reported widely elsewhere that are being corrected. I think these were originally coming from some Tom's Hardware articles, so one of them being this. So Tom's Hardware ran an article saying that AMD may have a new platform for upcoming Ryzen CPUs, an AM5 Plus socket, and that could be an issue for future compatibility. And one of the big selling points a lot of people, myself included, have said for AM5 is, hey, AMD has a good track record of supporting their sockets for multiple CPU generations, and they did at least say specifically they would support it through 2025 and possibly beyond. So if they did change architecture, which could introduce some compatibility issues between generations, that would be kind of a disaster for a lot of people's plans. Now, the source for this seemed to come just from, again, listed in a microcode extraction tool. An AM5 Plus being listed in a microcode extraction tool. So the person who makes that microcode extraction tool has now, MCE, has said that that's just nonsense. Basically, he used the plus to indicate AM5 and newer future platforms. It was not an actual socket change by AMD, and that he had just forgotten that the plus branding had been used in the past to indicate an actual different socket, update like AM3 Plus. So he's saying that that was just complete misinterpretation of a change he made, and he just chose to call something AM5 Plus to indicate like AM5 and beyond. It is all he meant by that. So if you did see headlines like this, I know a lot of times people see a headline and then don't see updates to that headline when they're corrected. I'm not sure if this has been corrected by Tom's Hardware yet. It wasn't when I pulled up this browser tab. But anyway, so just making sure you guys aren't panicking if you saw that and you were planning on your AM5 socket being upgradable. Now you're worried about that. So it's looking like that was kind of coming out of just a misinterpretation. Also, a Tom's Hardware article has been updated. There was a state that U.S. sanctions could start to impact the RTX 4090D, or Dragon Edition, which had been specifically created by NVIDIA to not be banned by the US to sell to China. And it's right when all of these bans happened that 4090 pricing around the world started to skyrocket, and it's come down a bit since then, but not even all the way. So once again, people could have been worried that if this happened again, we would see 4090 pricing still, shoot back up or cause more issues, that type of thing. But it's Tom's Hardware has updated this article to clarify that the US has issued a clarification document on existing sanctions, which, contrary to earlier reports, do not impact existing sanctions compliant GPUs shipping into China. In other words, if you saw this headline, don't basically cancel that, okay? The 4090D should still continue to be serving its function as shipping to China without restrictions. Now, whether or not that still actually does continue to bring down 4090 pricing, we'll have to see. Now, in other news, we're seeing Lenovo talking about their Legion Go and updating it. Within those conversations, we're seeing videocards.com report that they mentioned a Legion Go 2. In other words, it sounds like their plan is to continue this product line. The direct quote from Lenovo's Clifford Chong is, "We are still spending a lot of resources improving on the current Legion Go over the span of the last 6 months since launch. We've unlocked from day one till now a lot more experiences, and there are still engineering efforts to try to bring the next wave of features to the product." So they're talking about updating the current product. Now, definitely, it's a product category that we do see potential in. So in other words, these handheld Steam Deck-like gaming PCs, they feel like there is potential in this lineup. So, and again, continuing the quote, "We continue to invest, and we are looking towards, when the time comes right, of course, having the next generation to provide even more features." So again, it's looking like a Legion Go 2 is likely something they're strongly considering, again, when the timing is right. So in other words, probably once AMD has newer APUs out there that offer a large enough performance jump to make sense. Now, in other news, we're seeing Microsoft apparently quite confident in their ARM update for Windows. So Windows has been tried on ARM before and has not worked well. Apple has shifted to ARM with their M-series processors to much more resounding success. And a large part of their success came from the fact that when they did this, they had a very good translation layer called Rosetta 2 that allowed their older software that had not been developed natively for ARM to actually run quite well. So there wasn't a huge problem. I'm not saying everything was completely perfect. And a translation layer is never as fast as a native implementation. But the quote we're getting from this Verge article is that apparently in internal documents that have been apparently seen by The Verge, they are quoting them as saying that Windows AI PCs running ARM will have faster app emulation than Rosetta 2, which sounds like a pretty confident statement. If that's true, that is pretty cool. And it would be interesting to see what could happen if we actually had well-supported ARM functional Windows PCs. But we'll have to, again, see what comes of this. And also, while that's good news in competing with Rosetta 2, keep in mind, but by this point, most of the main software you'd be wanting to run on your Macs running on ARM, much of it is no longer reliant on Rosetta 2 and has gotten native implementations, which would be faster. So even if this can compete with a Rosetta 2 translation, that still puts it, I think, behind where Apple is, since they're years ahead on this whole transition to ARM. But it is interesting to see what will come of this. Now, speaking more on the AI PC stuff, one of the things that I've been a little bit worried about, or at least from my perspective, is so with the focus of moving of putting NPUs on the CPUs from AMD and NVIDIA to handle AI workloads. That's great for those AI workloads, but that means that you are dedicating some of your silicon to AI workloads. What if I don't want to do any AI workloads, right? So in other words, what could they have done with that same silicon to make traditional, CPU and GPU tasks faster had they not implemented the NPU? And I'm seeing articles like this one from WCCF Tech. Again, all of my sources will be in the video description as usual, saying AI craze may have nerfed AMD's and Intel's upcoming chips. Strix APUs originally had a big cache, which boosted CPU and iGPU performance. This is just based on some conversations on a forum. They do seem to be knowledgeable comments, so who knows, but it does seem reasonable that had we not moved to these big NPU pushes, that something else could have been done with that silicon space to further accelerate more traditional tasks, right? Now, I'm not saying that NPUs aren't necessarily the future for a lot of tasks, but I know, at least in my current workloads, I'm not sure how much this is going to help. But 5 years from now, maybe it will be interesting, and I totally understand them moving in that direction. But again, there's always that question of what else could have been done with the silicon. Anyway, speaking of using AI, it's also interesting not to see just the performance of AI hardware, but how AI is being used to improve the performance of hardware in the design and testing phase. And it's looking like AMD has joined with Arena to use AI to optimize and enhance next-gen Radeon GPU performance and efficiency. This isn't a new AI block on the GPU. This is using AI tools to help the optimization process, I think, in the design and testing of power curves and efficiency and things like that. So that's certainly interesting application of AI. In the console space, we're seeing Xbox doubling down on game preservation, as well as their claim that they made recently about the largest generational leap in hardware. My personal thought is that their claim for the largest generational leap could be based on big AI features and using that to justify that claim, but I don't know. It could also be some sort of other pivot, or maybe they'll have some ridiculously expensive, powerful console. I have no idea. But a direct quote going around, I think it's an email within Microsoft, says, "We are moving full speed ahead on our next generation hardware, focused on delivering the biggest technological leap ever in a generation." Notice they're saying biggest technological leap. So again, that to me feels like that could be an AI-based claim rather than a raw performance-based claim. But we'll have to see what happens. Now, in some other GPU news, we are seeing some new GPU cooler models. It looks like Power Color has the Hellhound Sakura edition. So if you're looking for a white GPU with some pink highlights, that certainly does give you an option. If you're looking for a Fog of Five Hills Elements anime-themed GPUs for your 4070 Ti Super, you better live in China, because that's where this is available, but it does certainly look like a standout GPU design, if that's the type of design that you are looking for. And then we're seeing Acer have some Radeon RX 7700 and 7800 XT Predator and Nitro GPUs now available in the United States. And that's most of the news I've got for you guys, other than I'll leave you with, I am continuing to watch some follow-up coverage on the OLED, the QD OLED versus WOLED debate with the new 4K 240Hz monitors. Optimum on YouTube has some follow-up coverage on this, which I think is very interesting if you want to look at the glossy versus matte, because for a lot of people that seems to be the point they're hung up on, and for me that's one of my big questions as well, because I kind of like a lot about the WOLED with its 480 Hz 1080p mode. Sounds really interesting to try out, but it does have the matte finish. However, apparently it's like a semi-glossy matte, and the glossy is kind of semi-glossy, so there's can be less differences than you've seen in Optimum. It definitely says that he actually prefers the matte finish on the WOLED when he has them side by side. You can see differences in how light reflects. Tim at Monitors Unboxed also has some really good follow-up coverage, getting into all the differences between the WOLED and QD OLED. You can see from this angle The QD OLED looks seems to have raised black levels when it has a lot of light shining on it, right? This looks less black than that. So again, there's a lot to think about. I'll let you guys know when I eventually make my decision. Hope you guys found the video useful and or interesting. And a huge thank you to viewers, subscribers, commenters, channel members who click the join button to directly support the channel financially. You get some early access to some videos, some exclusive videos. I recently posted one talking about my thoughts on trying to teach and do YouTube at the same time, and can I actually continue to do both? That's up there on the members feed. Channel members also get badges in their comments, so it's the comments stand out easier for me to find. All of that. So huge thank you to people who've done that. Totally understand people who can't afford to do that financially, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.